Hello and welcome to Tech Deals. Are 4-core machines obsolete in 2023? No, of course not. And I'm about to show you a game that plays very well on this, with an asterisk and a caveat after that. This is the $1,500 Cadillac build that I did in 2017, featuring the i7-7700K, 4 cores, 8 threads, and the RTX 2070, which is not what it was built with because this didn't exist in 2017, but I replaced the 1070 it was built with a 2070 at some point. Otherwise, this machine is very similar to the way it was built. There's a playlist in the video description below. I did a standalone recent update video on this machine. I'm doing several game videos like this that are single game dedicated videos so I can spend more time showing you live gameplay footage. The Division 2 has a built-in benchmark. It is great for testing graphics cards. It is not great for testing whole system configurations and especially CPUs. In my opinion, canned benchmarks don't do a great job showing CPU performance at times. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. They almost always do a good job showing graphics card differences. If you want to see 1070, 2070, 3070, 4070 levels of performance, the canned benchmark will do that just fine because you're looking for a frame rate. Here, we are looking for frame times. We are looking for smoothness of frame rate. We're looking for 1% lows, and we're looking to see how playable the game is overall. Spoiler alert, it's very playable. Now, the Division 2 came out in 2018, but it's received a lot of patches and updates since then, Season Pass, DLC, an expansion. It's gotten a lot of attention, and sometimes games that get a lot of patches and updates don't run the same way they did when they were brand new. This is worth covering to find out. Did the game become less playable over time on a 4-core chip because it's been patched, updated, DLC'd, and changed since launch? Or has it actually become easier to play because Windows has been updated, the video card drivers have been updated, the game has been optimized, patches, fixes, etc. So it can go both ways. Sometimes games get harder, sometimes they get easier. Now, this is, like I said, the live gameplay. I am going to be narrating this. I'm not just going to put music over it. I'm going to talk about the experience of playing it. I have extensive playtime in the Division 2. I have featured this many, many times on the channel, so I can talk about how well this runs on this hardware, at an FX 8300 and a 9900K, and a bunch of other things. 1440p ultra detail, which for a 2018 title on an RTX 2070 at 1440p is pretty reasonable. Yeah, it plays fine. If you want to play at 4K, get a 3070. If you want to play at 1080p, the 1070 would be just fine. And without any further ado, grab a drink, grab a snack, and let's get into this. Today's video is brought to you by eWin Racing, the best source for gaming chairs and desks for those long gaming sessions. We have a playlist of our eWin chair and desk videos linked in the video description below. Save 30% off of everything using the discount code TechDeals. More details at the end of the video. The Division 2, where do I start? This is an interesting game. It is an excellent follow-up to the original Division, fixing some of the minor issues of that original game, expanding the storyline, changing the setting, but ultimately fundamentally being the same game. Now, if you look at the upper left-hand corner of the screen, you will notice that we are using all 4 of our CPU cores and then some. We are into hyper-threading here. And the graphics card is being 100% utilized. We are playing at 1440p Ultra Detail with VSync manually turned off, but otherwise all the standard settings of Ultra are selected. And we have a very nice smooth frame rate. If you look at the frame time graph, it's pretty butter smooth. There's a couple of spikes here and there, but nothing substantial. If you just want the TLDR version of this entire experience, there's zero issues whatsoever with playing this game in the single-player story mode on an i7-7700K, even at 1440p Ultra. It is worth noting that that can change in multiplayer. Now, I've shown videos in the past of multiplayer. In fact, I've got a video somewhere on the channel showing a Ryzen 9 5950X 16-core 32-thread processor, and I was in that particular battle grouped with another real person, and we were engaged with 3 other enemy groups. There were drones flying, there were hunter-seeker mines going, smoke grenades were going off. We were defending a position against attacks from 3 different directions. It was insane. All the cores were being utilized. In fact, the CPU usage hit 75% at times. However, the frame time graph was butter smooth. I was genuinely shocked at how unbelievably smooth it was because I had never seen it that smooth on my i7-7700K at home, which only has 8 cores. And the minute you really load the machine up, it definitely starts to fall off. But wow, in certain situations, 16 cores absolutely positively makes a difference. However, you don't need 16 cores. It's just nice to have, and it makes the game smoother, and of course lets you multitask if you're not doing quite such demanding combat. This game is a tale of 2 stories, because the single-player mode, which is what you're watching right here. Now, I'm in the open world, but I'm just fighting bots, basically. I'm just fighting the open-world enemies. I'm by myself. I'm not grouped with anybody else. I'm only engaging one group at a time. This isn't that bad. It is using all the CPU. In fact, we just hit 75% there on the usage. Which brings me back to an important comment about CPU usage. One of the most frequently misunderstood points from commenters on prior videos is, Tech, what are you talking about? You say the CPU is fully utilized. I don't see the CPU at 100%, and you would be correct. Because on hyper-threaded CPUs, the only time the CPU will hit 100% is if every core and every thread is fully tasked. There are exceedingly few games that will properly make use of hyperthreading. The real advantage to hyperthreading in gaming is to smooth out the 1% lows and to allow background tasks to not really chug the machine, to really slam the CPU, pull a thread away, pull a core away from the game and cause some nasty hitching. Although we are definitely using a lot right there. So we're halfway into the hyperthreading. We're basically using 6 threads at the moment. The easy way to think of it is this. Take your total thread count, not your core count, your thread count. Take 100% and divide into it. If you had an i5-7600K 4-core, 4-thread chip, every core represents 25%. If you load up some task that only uses 1 core and 1 thread, then your CPU would be at 25%. If you move that exact same workload to an i7-7700K, then you will be at 12.5%, because 100% divided by 8 is 12.5, not 15. And of course, if you double that again, an 8-core, 16-thread CPU, every thread is 6.25% rather than 12.5%. And of course, obviously, 32 and 64-thread CPUs are even further down. Eventually, we'll have a 100-thread CPU, and then you can say every 1% is a thread, but we're a ways off from that from the consumer point of view. Another point worth considering, and probably one that I should have benchmarked and shown, but it's beyond the scope of this video, is higher frame rates need more CPU power. We are currently graphics card bound here. Our graphics card's stuck at 100%. We are, after all, running at 1440p, ultra detail, beautiful open world game. The graphics are awesome. And that means that our RTX 2070 is the limit. Now, if we had a 3070 or a 4070, then the frame rate would be noticeably higher. If we turn the detail down, then our frame rate would also be noticeably higher, except it wouldn't. Because the CPU is already basically tasked to capacity, we're basically at our limit. Now, many of you may say, well, we're at 73 frames per second right now. We're currently averaging 69 frames per second. Side note, the 3 white numbers on the screen, the leftmost one is the real-time frame rate. The middle one is the rolling average frame rate, and the right one is the rolling 1% low average. Okay, that sounds funny. It's the average of the 1% low frame rates rolling over time. The longer you play, the less those numbers will move, because it is basically taking the entire benchmark and running a continuous average. So they were very jumpy at the beginning of the recording, but they're smoothing out, and they're not going to vary by tons. In fact, the final numbers was an average of 72 frames per second with a 1% low of 55. So both of those numbers will get a little bit better towards the end, but we're almost already at the final answer. So the point of all this is if you have a 60 hertz monitor, you turn on VSync and you're running at 60 frames per second, you're fine. If you have a 144 hertz monitor, you are not going to get 144 frames per second in this game on an i7-7700K. It doesn't have enough CPU power. You need a faster CPU to do that. Not only do you need more cores, which this game will absolutely use them all, but a higher clock speed wouldn't hurt either. An i9-9900K will do 144 frames per second in this game if your graphics card or resolution and detail setting are appropriate. Now, as a further side note, if you take a look at the RAM usage, you'll see we've got 32 gigabytes of RAM installed, and we're using about 13 gigabytes of it. Now, that is the active use of RAM for the game and everything that's needed here at the moment. This doesn't include cached memory, for example, assets on the disk that are being loaded and unloaded as we travel around. This game will play in 16 gigabytes of RAM. And if you have a decent SSD that it's installed on, and your boot drive is a decent SSD, and your swap file is, of course, a good SSD, it won't be a big deal unless you're multitasking, unless you have stuff in the background. Remember, this is a clean test bench. There is nothing else running, no task trays, nothing, and this is being recorded on a separate computer. So this machine doesn't even know it's being recorded. The only two things open on this machine are MSI Afterburner, which takes a trivial amount of memory. It is not memory demanding. And then the game itself. And of course, Ubisoft's launcher, but it's just sitting in the background, not doing anything. It's not like Steam's open, Battle.net's open, Epic Games. None of that stuff's open. And then if we look at VRAM, you'll see that we're using 6.3 gigabytes of VRAM. 8 gigabyte cards are still fine for 2018 games at 1440p Ultra. 8 gigabyte cards really aren't fine anymore for this detail setting and resolution for brand new games. I mean, yes, they'll run. Texture compression is a thing. A lot of games are designed to just use the VRAM that's available, and they'll swap in and out of main RAM as necessary. After all, game developers want to be able to sell their games to as many people as possible. But people confuse will run with will run well. I personally believe that 8 gigabytes of RAM for 1440p has had its day. This game is 4 years old. Actually, a little more than 4 years old now because it's 2023. It's 4.5 years old. 8 gigs of RAM is fine at 1440p. But if you want to play current modern games at 1440p with the detail settings cranked up, and that's an important point. If you turn the detail to medium at 1440p, well, fine, Hogwarts Legacy will run fine on an 8 gig card. But if you want the detail at ultra, yeah, 16 gigs is where it's at now for 1440p. I know the RX 6700 XT has been really popular. I've recommended it many times, and frankly, for the $350 to $400 that it's costed over the past year or so, I stand by that recommendation. I mean, there's been times it's been close to $350 as I'm recording this in March of 2023, and a 12 gigabyte decent 1440p graphics card with, for $350, I don't have a problem with that. On the other hand, you can also get RX 6800 and 6800 XT cards for around $500, $550 with 16 gigs of RAM. And of course, the new cards have more RAM as well, not counting the ridiculous RTX 4070 Ti with, really? NVIDIA, 12 gigs of VRAM? Let's not make this a rant about NVIDIA, Ingredia, releasing expensive cards with not nearly enough VRAM for the price. I hate to say it, but with the 40 series as it stands now keep in mind as I'm recording this, the 4070 non-Ti has not launched yet. We'll see where it comes out in price and everything else. But as it stands now, you have an $800 4070 Ti with 12 gigs of VRAM, gag. You have a 4080 with 16 gigs of VRAM for $1,200. Okay, sure. And then you have a 24 gig VRAM RTX 4090 for $1,600. Don't yell at me all at once in the comments below, but the 4090 is the deal among that list. No, it's not cheap. Yes, it's expensive. Yes, honestly, it's expensive even for its amazing performance, and it really is a step above. But $1,600? Good Lord. That's not rich person graphics card money because, normal people can save up their money and buy that. It's not like a Ferrari. But geez, that's a lot of money. Even inflation adjusted, that's a lot of money. Look, it's a great card. The 3090 was a good card. The 4090 is a good card, but it's expensive. And if you go back and you look at the 980 Ti and 1080 Ti and you inflation adjust those forward to 2023, they were not relatively this expensive, even taking into account post-COVID inflation numbers. Having said that, you still cannot buy a 4090 reliably, and I guess the 4080 and 4070 Ti have been in and out of stock, and I think at this point they're probably much easier to find. But the 4090 has been hard to find. It's getting easier. I've started to see it come back in stock. It'll stay in stock for a few hours. It'll go out of stock. I've been watching every couple of days. I have a save search on both Amazon and Nvidia, and I just look at them just to see when are these going to become reliably in stock. They have slowly started to drop in stock, but not consistently. There is definitely demand at the top end for the very, very best. And of course, there is a segment of the population that will just pay whatever to get mega performance. Allow me to bring you back to the RX 6700 XT with 12 gigs of VRAM for under $400. That's what I like to call a tech deal. eWin Racing has a wide selection of chairs to fit all shapes and sizes of gamers, ranging from petite to cuddly. They have something for every type of gamer. Not just sizes, but colors and material options as well, including red, blue, purple, pink, orange, and more, plus cloth and leather choices. We have over half a dozen chair and desk videos in a playlist down in the video description below. We also have a very special offer just for Tech Deals viewers. Save 30% off of everything using discount code TechDeals using our link in the video description. We have used eWin gaming chairs for 3 years in our office, sitting on them for up to 8-hour marathon live streams. They are very comfortable, and we are happy to work with eWin to bring you this special discount and recommend eWin for all of your gaming chair and desk needs. Thank you so much for watching all the way to this part of the video. A bonus gold star for you. Well, the Division 2 ran just fine. Couple of caveats. We were playing single player open world, which is more demanding than the instance world I've tested in the past, but less demanding than the Dark Zone. Would I want to play multiplayer combat with multiple groups of live people in a heavy engagement with lots of enemies in the later parts of this game? No. I have played this game on a 16-core chip, and it will use all 16 cores, but only in heavy engagement scenarios and in high frame rate scenarios. I was genuinely shocked the first time I played the Division 2 on a Ryzen 9 3950X, and then the Ryzen 9 5950X. It does make a difference, but only in very limited circumstances. If you want to play the solo story mode, this will do that just fine. If you want over 100 frames per second, if you want to play the Dark Zone, if you want to have butter smooth performance when you're playing with multiple real people and multiple groups of engagement with NPCs at the same time, you need a better CPU. So it's very conditional. But hopefully that information and feedback is useful to you, because I got carried away and I played the Division 2 longer than I needed to for this video, because I was running around taking over control points and having a lot of fun. I did forget I was benchmarking when I was playing this. I was just having an absolute blast. It's a lot of fun, and if you like this kind of game, if you like what you saw in the footage, I would encourage you to pick up a copy. It's been out for a long time now. It's cheap. You can get it on sale for a very low price. Like, comment, subscribe, do all the YouTube things. Link to the playlist featuring the other games and other videos down below. Let me know in the comment section what you want to see. Do you want the video card changed? Do you want a different CPU? Do you want different games tested? Do you like this format of video where I talk through this much live footage, or would you prefer to see something else? Leave me your comments and feedback below. Thank you very much for watching. I will see all of you next time.